September 1944. Interrogation Room, Ossertestel West, Oberursel, Germany. The American P-47 pilot sat across from Major Hanns Scharff, arms crossed, jaw set, prepared for torture that never came. "You Americans have remarkable industrial capacity," Scharff said casually, pouring 2 cups of real coffee, a luxury Germans hadn't seen in years. "Your Republic plant in Farmingdale must be producing, what, 30 Thunderbolts daily now?" The pilot's eyes flickered, surprise, confusion. No threats. No violence. Just conversation. What this young American couldn't know was that within hours, he would voluntarily reveal tactical information that German intelligence desperately needed. Not through brutality, but through a psychological technique so effective that after the war, the United States would adopt it as standard interrogation doctrine. Major Hanns Scharff, the Luftwaffe's master interrogator, had discovered something that contradicted everything the Nazi regime taught about extracting information through fear. He learned that listening proved more powerful than torture. His journey from businessman to interrogator, his revolutionary techniques, and his post-war legacy would reshape how democracies gather intelligence. This is the story of the man who proved humanity more effective than cruelty. The path to Oberursel began far from military intelligence. Hans Joachim Gottlob Scharff, born December 16, 1907, in Rassenburg, East Prussia, seemed destined for business, not interrogation. His father owned a successful textile business. Young Hans learned languages naturally, English from British business partners, later French and Russian. In 1930, seeking opportunity beyond Germany's economic depression, Scharff moved to Johannesburg, South Africa. There he met and married Margaret Stokes, an Englishwoman. For 7 years, he managed business operations, raised a family, lived the comfortable life of an expatriate businessman. Nothing suggested military aptitude, certainly not intelligence work. When his parents' health declined in 1937, Scharff returned to Germany with his British wife and 2 sons. Timing that would change everything. September 1939 shattered his business plans. Germany invaded Poland. Scharff, now 31, received conscription papers. His age, business background, and language skills made traditional combat roles unlikely. The Luftwaffe assigned him to translation services, mundane paperwork for a man who spoke 4 languages fluently. He worked in offices, translating captured documents, processing intelligence reports, tasks requiring accuracy but not imagination. Then Luftwaffe intelligence noticed something unusual in his file: British wife, 7 years in English-speaking environment, perfect command of colloquial English including American slang, regional accents. In early 1943, with Allied bombing intensifying and American pilots flooding German POW camps, the Ossertestel West needed interrogators who understood Americans. Not just their language, but culture, thinking, psychology. Hanns Scharff received transfer orders to Oberursel. Ossertestel West, Luftwaffe Intelligence Evaluation Center near Frankfurt, processed captured Allied airmen. When Scharff arrived in March 1943, standard German interrogation followed predictable patterns: isolation in cold cells, minimal food, lengthy standing, threats of Gestapo transfer if prisoners didn't cooperate. The threat carried weight, everyone knew Gestapo methods. Luftwaffe intelligence believed fear extracted information. Initial interrogations happened immediately after capture, while prisoners were disoriented, frightened, vulnerable. Interrogators demanded tactical details, squadron numbers, aircraft specifications, mission targets. Most Allied airmen, trained to resist, provided only name, rank, serial number. The system produced minimal actionable intelligence while hardening prisoner resistance. Scharff observed this approach with growing skepticism. His business experience taught him that relationships built on fear rarely produced honest information. Customers lied when pressured. Employees withheld when threatened. Why would enemy pilots behave differently? During his first week observing senior interrogator sessions, Scharff saw patterns repeating: interrogator demands, prisoner refuses, interrogator threatens, prisoner withdraws further. An escalating cycle producing diminishing returns. Then came his first solo assignment, First Lieutenant Thomas Holloway, shot down over Bremen, P-47 pilot with the 56th Fighter Group. Standard procedure placed Holloway in isolation for 3 days before interrogation. Scharff reviewed the file, Midwest American, farm background, 2 confirmed kills. The dossier included remarkably detailed information already known, squadron location, commanding officer name, even recent replacements. German intelligence, Scharff realized, already possessed substantial information from multiple sources, radio intercepts, reconnaissance photographs, previous prisoner statements, even American newspapers published squadron movements. The intelligence gap wasn't what Germans didn't know, but confirming accuracy and filling specific operational details. When Scharff entered the interrogation room that March morning, he made choices that violated every protocol. First, he brought real coffee, not ersatz substitutes. He offered American cigarettes obtained through neutral Switzerland. He wore a casual uniform, not the formal intimidation attire. He smiled genuinely. "Lieutenant Holloway, I'm Major Scharff. Before we begin, I want you to understand my position clearly. Geneva Convention requires I treat you as prisoner of war with specific protections. I will honor those completely. You're required to provide name, rank, service number, nothing more. I respect that." Holloway's defensive posture softened slightly. This wasn't the interrogation he'd been trained to expect. Scharff continued conversationally, "I spent 7 years in South Africa before the war. Loved the open spaces, reminds me of your American Midwest. You're from Kansas, I understand. Must be beautiful country. Small talk. Getting to know a person." Holloway responded cautiously, "Nebraska, actually." "Ah, forgive me," Scharff smiled self-deprecatingly. "I confuse your Great Plains states. Farming country." And so began a conversation, not an interrogation. Scharff asked about Nebraska weather, farming challenges, nothing military. Holloway, expecting torture, encountered friendliness. The psychological whiplash was profound. After 30 minutes, Scharff said casually, "Your 56th Fighter Group has quite a reputation. Colonel Zemke runs an excellent operation." Holloway's eyes widened. How did this German know his commander's name? Scharff continued smoothly, "The transfers last month from the 61st Squadron caused some adjustment, I'd imagine. Integrating new pilots mid-operational cycle complicates unit cohesion. This was Scharff's innovation, demonstrate knowledge so comprehensive that resistance seemed pointless. He wasn't fishing for information. He appeared to already possess it. The psychological impact was devastating. If Germans knew everything anyway, what was the point of resistance? Holloway didn't reveal classified information that session. Scharff didn't push. Instead, he ended cordially, "Thank you for the conversation, Lieutenant. I enjoyed learning about Nebraska. Tomorrow, after you've rested, perhaps we can talk more." Dismissed without pressure, Holloway returned to his cell confused. The interrogation he'd been trained to resist never happened. The next day, Scharff varied his approach. He took Holloway outside, fresh air, sunshine after days in gray cells. They walked the compound perimeter while Scharff pointed out spring flowers blooming. "After this war ends, Lieutenant, you'll return to Nebraska. I hope to return to South Africa. Isn't it absurd that circumstances force men who'd otherwise be friends to fight? Philosophy, not interrogation. Humanity, not hostility." During their walk, Scharff mentioned casually, "The Republic plant in Farmingdale has increased Thunderbolt production remarkably. Your squadron receives replacements much faster now than 6 months ago. Another demonstration of comprehensive knowledge." Holloway nodded without thinking, confirming information Scharff had actually been uncertain about. The technique worked brilliantly. Present partial information as complete fact. Subjects naturally confirmed or corrected details, revealing intelligence gaps without realizing they'd provided information. By the third session, Holloway was conversing freely. Not revealing classified operations, but discussing general experiences, confirming tactical patterns, validating technical assessments. He didn't feel interrogated. He felt understood by an enemy who, under different circumstances, might have been a friend. When Holloway transferred to permanent POW camp after a week, Scharff had extracted more actionable intelligence than months of traditional interrogation produced. His report to Luftwaffe intelligence included confirmed squadron strength, typical mission flight paths, recent tactical modifications, pilot morale assessments, all obtained without a single threat. His superiors noticed. They assigned more difficult cases. And Scharff's legend grew. Over the following 18 months, Hanns Scharff interrogated approximately 500 American and British airmen. His success rate astounded Luftwaffe intelligence. Prisoners who resisted traditional interrogation for weeks would converse openly with Scharff within days. His methods refined into a systematic psychological technique that intelligence professionals would later study for decades. The Scharff Technique, as it became known post-war, rested on several core principles. First, establish rapport immediately. Scharff treated prisoners as guests, not enemies. Comfortable seating, refreshments, pleasant environment. He often conducted sessions in his office rather than sterile interrogation rooms. Second, demonstrate comprehensive existing knowledge. Scharff maintained extensive files on Allied units, updated constantly from all intelligence sources. Before each interrogation, he memorized relevant details. When speaking with prisoners, he'd mention specifics, commanding officer names, recent transfers, base locations, aircraft tail numbers. The psychological impact was profound. Prisoners assumed Germans knew everything, making resistance seem futile. Third, never ask direct questions. Scharff conversed, discussed, speculated. He'd make statements, sometimes accurate, sometimes deliberately incorrect, and let prisoners naturally correct or confirm. This indirect approach bypassed resistance training. Pilots were taught to refuse answering questions. They weren't trained to avoid conversation. Fourth, use the illusion of knowing more. Scharff would mention classified information obtained from previous sources as if it were common knowledge, then watch prisoners' reactions. Surprise, confirmation, or correction in facial expressions revealed intelligence gaps without prisoners consciously providing information. Fifth, establish shared humanity. Scharff genuinely liked Americans. His British wife gave him appreciation for Allied culture. He discussed sports, movies, music, peacetime dreams. He showed photographs of his family. He positioned himself as a professional doing an unfortunate job, not an ideological enemy. Sixth, make prisoners want to talk. Isolation, uncertainty, fear, these emotional states made conversation psychologically necessary. Scharff provided human connection exactly when prisoners desperately needed it. Stockholm Syndrome at its most effective. His most famous case involved Colonel Hub Zemke, commander of the 56th Fighter Group, shot down over enemy territory October 30, 1944. Zemke was a high-value prisoner, group commander with comprehensive operational knowledge. Traditional interrogation would have produced nothing. Zemke was experienced, disciplined, prepared to resist. When Scharff greeted Zemke, he treated him with professional respect bordering on admiration. Colonel Zemke, it's an honor. Your tactical innovations have been studied by Luftwaffe pilots extensively. The Finger 4 formation modifications your group pioneered changed fighter combat doctrine. Flattery? Certainly. But also genuine professional respect. Scharff understood military psychology. Senior officers have egos invested in their accomplishments. Acknowledging expertise opened conversational doors. They discussed fighter tactics theoretically, neither revealing classified information but exploring combat philosophy. Scharff mentioned specific engagements Zemke's group participated in, demonstrating detailed operational tracking. Your April 8 escort mission to Brunswick was masterfully executed. The feint toward Hanover drew German interceptors away from bomber formations beautifully. This kind of detailed knowledge, delivered casually, convinced Zemke that resistance was pointless. Over several sessions, Zemke didn't reveal current operations, he wasn't foolish. But he confirmed tactical patterns, validated technical assessments, discussed morale and supply situations in general terms. Information that, combined with other sources, filled German intelligence gaps. When Zemke transferred to permanent captivity, he remarked to fellow prisoners that Scharff was the most dangerous interrogator in Germany. Dangerous not through cruelty, but through understanding. The ultimate professional compliment. Scharff's approach wasn't universally appreciated within German military intelligence. Hardcore Nazi interrogators viewed his methods as weak, insufficiently ideological. They believed fear and pain extracted truth. Scharff's psychological technique seemed almost compassionate, which contradicted Nazi doctrine about treating enemies. But results silenced critics. Scharff's intelligence reports provided actionable information that traditional interrogation never produced. Luftwaffe command valued effectiveness over ideology. Additionally, Scharff carefully cultivated his reputation among Allied prisoners. Word spread through POW camps, if you get Scharff, you got lucky. He's fair, he's decent, and he won't torture you. This reputation itself became an interrogation tool. Prisoners arrived expecting humane treatment, which lowered defensive barriers immediately. Scharff also exploited the Allied training gap. American and British pilots received resistance training focused on physical torture, how to withstand pain, isolation, intimidation. They weren't prepared for friendliness. Their psychological defenses, built against cruelty, had no defense against genuine human kindness. One pilot later recalled, "Scharff made you want to talk. Not because you feared consequences, but because he seemed like someone who'd understand." He was the friendly enemy, which was far more dangerous than a hostile one. The ethical complexity was profound. Scharff wasn't torturing prisoners, wasn't violating Geneva Conventions. He provided better treatment than many POW camps. Yet his methods extracted intelligence that potentially cost Allied lives. Where does psychological manipulation cross into unethical interrogation? This question would haunt post-war intelligence agencies for decades. As Allied bombing intensified through 1944, Germany's situation deteriorated rapidly. Scharff witnessed the Reich's collapse from his intelligence position. American daylight raids demolished German industrial capacity. Luftwaffe lost air superiority comprehensively. Prisoner interrogations confirmed what German leadership denied: American production vastly exceeded German capacity. Allied morale remained high despite losses. The war was lost. Scharff knew it. Every interrogation confirmed it. Pilots casually mentioned replacement aircraft arriving faster than losses. Manufacturing numbers that dwarfed German output. Technologies under development. The overwhelming industrial and material superiority of American warfare. Yet Scharff continued his job professionally. Not from Nazi ideology, he had little. From professional responsibility and survival instinct. Defection meant abandoning family. Resistance meant execution. The only option was continuing until war's end, then facing consequences. By early 1945, fewer Allied airmen required interrogation. Air superiority meant fewer shootdowns. Scharff's caseload diminished. He spent increasing time preparing for inevitable Allied victory, documenting his techniques, hoping professionalism might earn mercy. April 1945 brought American forces to Oberursel. Ossertestel West faced capture. As American troops approached, Scharff made a decision that likely saved his life. He contacted Allied command through Swiss intermediaries, offering to surrender the intelligence facility intact, all files, records, prisoner information, in exchange for protection for his staff and himself. The gamble worked. American military intelligence valued the comprehensive records more than punishing one interrogator. On April 2, 1945, Hanns Scharff formally surrendered to the Third Army. American intelligence officers immediately recognized his value. Where German interrogation had failed, Scharff had succeeded. How? The U.S. Army Air Force's intelligence began intensive debriefing. Not as war criminal, Scharff had violated no Geneva Convention protocols, but as intelligence asset. They wanted to understand his methods completely. For months, Scharff explained his techniques to American interrogators. He provided detailed analysis of psychological principles underlying effective intelligence gathering. He demonstrated conversation techniques. He explained how comprehensive background research enabled the illusion of total knowledge. American intelligence professionals realized they were learning from a master. The Scharff Technique became required study at U.S. military intelligence schools. His principles, rapport building, indirect questioning, demonstrating existing knowledge, exploiting psychological need for human connection, became foundational to American interrogation doctrine. The irony was profound. Techniques developed by German interrogator became American standard practice. By late 1945, with thorough vetting confirming Scharff held no Nazi Party membership and committed no war crimes, American authorities cleared him. He wasn't prosecuted. Instead, they offered a position, immigration to the United States as intelligence consultant. The country he'd worked against would become his new home. In 1950, Hanns Scharff emigrated to the United States with his family, settling in California. The career transition seemed impossible, former enemy interrogator to American citizen. Yet Scharff navigated it successfully. He lectured at military intelligence schools, teaching interrogation ethics and psychological techniques. He emphasized that effective intelligence gathering required respecting human dignity, not violating it. Torture produced unreliable information. Psychological manipulation through rapport and understanding produced actionable intelligence. His post-war consulting work influenced multiple generations of American military and intelligence interrogators. CIA, FBI, military intelligence all studied his methods. The Scharff Technique became standard curriculum. Declassified documents from the 1950s and 60s reference his teachings extensively. But Scharff's most surprising second career had nothing to do with intelligence. He discovered artistic talent in mosaic work, creating large-scale installations. His artwork eventually earned commissions from major clients, including Disney, for whom he created the elaborate mosaic murals at Cinderella Castle in Walt Disney World. The former Luftwaffe interrogator became a celebrated artist. This transformation, from intelligence officer to artist, symbolized his life philosophy: humans contain multitudes, capable of both manipulation and creation, warfare and art. Scharff gave numerous interviews in later life, discussing his wartime experiences with remarkable candor. He expressed no pride in supporting the Nazi war effort, though he defended his methods. "I never tortured anyone. I never threatened anyone. I treated prisoners as human beings who happened to be on the opposite side." If that produced intelligence, it was because they recognized sincerity. Critics argued that psychological manipulation constitutes a form of torture. Exploiting isolation, fear, and emotional vulnerability wasn't physically violent, but caused psychological harm. Scharff acknowledged the ethical ambiguity: was I kind to prisoners? Yes. Were my motives pure? No. I was gathering intelligence to help Germany fight against their countries. The kindness was instrumental, not altruistic. Does that make it worse? I don't know. The long-term impact of Scharff's techniques remains controversial within intelligence communities. Proponents argue his methods demonstrate that effective interrogation never requires physical torture. Every intelligence objective achievable through cruelty can be accomplished more effectively through psychology. Opponents counter that psychological manipulation, while less visibly brutal, constitutes ethical violation. Exploiting human need for connection, deliberately creating conditions where prisoners desperately want to talk, then using that vulnerability. Isn't that a form of cruelty? The debate intensified post-9/11 when enhanced interrogation techniques included methods far harsher than Scharff employed. Intelligence professionals argued both sides, some citing Scharff as proof that torture is unnecessary, others claiming modern threats require more aggressive approaches. Academic studies of the Scharff technique consistently find it produces more reliable information than coercive methods. Prisoners subjected to torture often provide false information to stop pain. Prisoners engaged through rapport and psychology tend to provide accurate information, sometimes without realizing they've revealed anything valuable. This distinction, reliability of intelligence, became crucial in modern interrogation policy debates. By the 1980s, the Scharff technique was foundational to FBI and military interrogation training, emphasizing non-coercive psychological methods. The U.S. Army Field Manual on Interrogation explicitly incorporated his principles. Law enforcement agencies adopted similar approaches for criminal interrogations. The influence of one German interrogator reshaped how democratic societies gather intelligence. Hanns Scharff died September 10, 1992, in California, aged 84. His obituaries described both careers, intelligence officer and mosaic artist. Former prisoners he'd interrogated sent condolences to his family, remembering him as the enemy who treated us with dignity. Several visited him over the years, maintaining unlikely friendships formed under extraordinary circumstances. His legacy within intelligence communities remains profound. Every American military interrogator since 1950 has studied his techniques. His emphasis on psychology over coercion, on listening over demanding, on rapport over fear, fundamentally changed intelligence doctrine. The ethical questions his career raises remain unresolved. Can manipulation through kindness be ethical if goals are intelligence extraction? Is psychological coercion less harmful than physical torture, or simply less visible? Where are the lines between effective intelligence gathering and exploitation? These questions matter today more than ever. Modern interrogation policy balances effectiveness against ethics, security against human rights. Scharff's career provides a case study in that balance, highly effective intelligence gathering without physical torture, yet deliberately manipulating prisoners' psychological vulnerabilities. His techniques proved something crucial: you don't need cruelty to extract information. Understanding human psychology, building rapport, demonstrating knowledge, creating conditions where subjects want to talk, these methods produce better intelligence than torture. From a practical standpoint, effectiveness without brutality should be standard. From an ethical standpoint, the picture grows more complex. Using someone's isolation, fear, and need for human connection against them, even while treating them kindly, raises moral questions that simple rejection of physical torture doesn't resolve. In 1995, the U.S. Air Force published a classified analysis of interrogation effectiveness from World War II through modern operations. The study, partially declassified in 2008, concluded, interrogation methods emphasizing rapport, demonstrated knowledge, and psychological understanding consistently produce higher quality intelligence than coercive methods. Subject, Major Hanns Scharff, Luftwaffe intelligence, demonstrates this principle definitively. His techniques should remain foundational to American interrogation doctrine. 3 years later, the CIA's interrogation training manual explicitly referenced Scharff's approach as preferred methodology. The document emphasized, physical coercion and torture are prohibited. Beyond legal and ethical prohibitions, research confirms such methods produce unreliable intelligence. Psychological techniques modeled on Scharff technique produce superior results while maintaining legal and ethical standards. Yet despite this official doctrine, enhanced interrogation programs violated these principles. The tension between Scharff's proven methods and aggressive post-9/11 interrogation approaches highlights ongoing institutional conflicts within intelligence communities. Those advocating harsh interrogation often ignore historical evidence that psychological methods work better. Those defending ethical interrogation cite Scharff as proof that effectiveness and ethics align. His legacy became a battlefield in larger policy debates. For the men he interrogated, memories remained complex. Colonel Hub Zemke, writing in his post-war memoir, dedicated a chapter to Scharff. He was the most dangerous interrogator I encountered, precisely because he was the most humane. He never threatened, never coerced, never intimidated. He simply listened, conversed, and somehow, you found yourself talking. Looking back, I revealed more to him than I intended. Not classified operations, I wasn't that foolish, but enough general information that, combined with other sources, surely helped German intelligence. I don't regret talking to him. In that situation, everyone talked to someone. I'm glad my interrogator was Scharff rather than the Gestapo. But I never underestimated what he was doing. The friendly enemy is still the enemy. This nuanced assessment captures the ethical complexity. Prisoners appreciated humane treatment while recognizing manipulation. Scharff's kindness was real, but his motives were intelligence gathering. Can both truths coexist? They must, because they do. Human relationships, even in wartime, contain multitudes. First Lieutenant Thomas Holloway, decades after the war, visited Scharff in California. Their meeting, documented by military historians, offered remarkable closure. Holloway thanked Scharff for treating him with dignity during the most frightening experience of his life. Scharff apologized for manipulating Holloway's trust. They discussed the war, interrogation techniques, how both their lives had unfolded since. The enemy interrogator and captured pilot shared wine, laughter, and mutual respect. Warfare's strange legacy, enemies becoming friends when ideology no longer divided them. These reconciliations suggest something important about Scharff's approach. By treating prisoners as humans first, enemies second, he created conditions where post-war relationships became possible. Prisoners who experienced torture carried lifelong trauma. Prisoners who experienced Scharff's methods often retained grudging respect. The difference mattered, even if ethics remained complicated. Hanns Scharff's story offers lessons that transcend intelligence gathering. First, effectiveness and brutality are not synonymous. The most effective methods often involve understanding, not force. This principle applies beyond interrogation, to education, management, diplomacy, conflict resolution. Second, perceived enemies are still human. Treating them with dignity, even while opposing their goals, maintains your own humanity and often produces better outcomes than dehumanization. Third, professional excellence is possible even within morally complicated circumstances. Scharff performed his job with skill and ethics within wartime constraints, then applied those skills to peacetime purposes. Fourth, people contain multitudes. Interrogator and artist, enemy and friend, manipulator and humanist, all coexisted in one person. Simplistic moral judgments fail to capture human complexity. Fifth, legacy is complicated. Scharff's interrogation work supported a regime that committed unprecedented atrocities. His techniques were later adopted by democracies to defend against threats. His personal conduct maintained ethical standards his government violated. How do we assess such a legacy? With nuance, acknowledging that history offers few simple heroes or villains. Most people occupy moral gray areas, doing their best within circumstances they didn't create, making choices with imperfect information, living with consequences they didn't fully anticipate. Hanns Scharff was one such person. Not a hero, not a villain, but a professional who discovered that listening proved more powerful than threatening, understanding more effective than cruelty. In an era defined by brutal warfare and ideological extremism, he chose a different path. That choice, and its consequences, continue influencing how we gather intelligence, treat prisoners, and navigate the ethical complexities of conflict. His final interview, conducted in 1991, a year before his death, offered this reflection: "I've been asked many times if I regret my wartime service. The honest answer is complicated. I regret supporting the Nazi regime. I don't regret treating prisoners humanely. I regret that my intelligence work helped prolong a terrible war. I don't regret discovering that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, that understanding human psychology produces better results than cruelty. If my techniques, divorced from their wartime context, help modern democracies gather intelligence without torture, then perhaps something good emerged from a morally complicated situation. I was never a Nazi. I was a German officer doing my job as ethically as circumstances allowed. History will judge whether that distinction matters. I can only say I tried to maintain my humanity while serving in inhumane circumstances. Whether I succeeded is for others to decide. This humility, this acknowledgement of moral complexity, defines Scharff's legacy more than any specific technique or wartime success. He understood that ethics exist even in warfare, that professionalism requires treating enemies with dignity, that effectiveness and humanity can align. These lessons, learned by a German interrogator and taught to American intelligence officers, transcend the specific historical moment that produced them. Today, the Scharff Technique remains a cornerstone of ethical interrogation training throughout Western intelligence services. Every FBI agent, military interrogator, and CIA officer learns his principles. The emphasis on rapport, on psychological understanding, on listening rather than demanding, these approaches define modern interrogation doctrine. When democratic societies debate enhanced interrogation, torture, or aggressive questioning, Scharff's legacy provides an evidence-based counterargument: effective intelligence doesn't require cruelty. Understanding works better than force. Patience produces more than pressure. These aren't naive principles. They're proven methods, tested across decades, validated by research, and demonstrated by the man who invented them while interrogating 500 Allied prisoners without torture. The irony remains striking. Nazi Germany, a regime built on brutality and dehumanization, produced an interrogator who discovered that humanity works better than cruelty. The country that fought against fascism learned intelligence techniques from an enemy officer. The interrogator who manipulated prisoners for military advantage became a teacher of ethical intelligence gathering for the world's leading democracy. History offers few simple narratives. Hanns Scharff's story reminds us that even in humanity's darkest chapters, individuals make choices that transcend their circumstances. He chose understanding over cruelty, listening over threatening, psychology over torture. That choice, made in service of a terrible cause, ultimately served a better purpose. His techniques, developed for Nazi Germany, became tools for democratic societies. His example, of professional ethics maintained within morally bankrupt systems, offers hope that individuals can act with integrity even when institutions fail.